be expecting that they would incorporate the new sidewalk standard that has the planter strip. With the other phases, they were all connecting to the same streets where they started, curb-tight sidewalks, so it made some sort of sense to kind of continue that pattern within the same subdivision. Now we're going across a neighborhood-type route, street, and so they're separated, and there's no argument to be made to keep doing curb-tight sidewalks.
Have you had conversation with
Yeah, they're aware of that because it was the same condition that we had last year, and so we're continuing that.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve a one-year extension of the development agreement and conceptual master plan for Phase 4 of the Northwood Estates subdivision with the updated sidewalk conditions.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we approve the concept master plan for Phase 4 of the Northwood Estates subdivision with the updated development plans.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll now move on to the public hearing, and we're going to switch something around on this. We are going to start with 5B, which is to consider a request from Icon Construction and Development, LLC, to subdivide 9.14 acre site into a 41 lot subdivision intended for detached single-family homes located on the west side of North Pine Street between Northeast 15th and Northeast 16th Avenue. That is SUB 18-06 Hamilton Acres. It is my understanding that they have requested that we postpone this to a date certain. Is that correct, Brian?
That's right, and I believe our next regularly scheduled meeting, what they requested is the 28th of February, second and fourth Mondays. I believe that's the 28th. Is it 25th?
I'm not sure.
That's why I was wondering, maybe I was getting it wrong.
I think that would be
Is
the
that the
26th. Or no, 25th.
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 Okay. So, yeah, and it would be best, we really don't have any reason why we shouldn't honor so that the applicant can be present, and their engineer was unable to come tonight, and so typically the Planning Commission has honored at least the first request for a postponement.
Okay. We have any discussion on that? Any issue with that? Okay, we can make that happen. The next item is to consider a request from Paul DuPont to subdivide a 1.96 acre site into a 9 lot subdivision intended for detached single-family homes located at 2525 Northeast Territorial Place. It's SUB 18-05 Territorial Place Estates. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please be prepared to step forward to the microphone at the appropriate time. State your name, mailing address, and interest in the matter. For those people other than the applicants that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please sign in on the sheet or speak up when we call for testimony. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each, the opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Okay? Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact. Okay. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflict of interest or ex parte contact? Okay. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, Brian will give a staff report. Then there will be questions by the commissioners. Then we will open the public hearing for testimony. The applicant will have not more than 15 minutes. Proponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Opponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Neutral, people thought to be neutral, will have about 5 minutes, and rebuttal by the applicant, not more than 10 minutes. At that time, we will close the public testimony, and then we will have questions, if any, by the hearing body here, discussion, and no additional testimony, and then a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, let's start. Brian.
Hey, Chair Savory.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was thinking we had 3 minutes. Do we have 5 now, or is that?
5. We're feeling very generous tonight. Liberal in that sort of thing. That thing over. But if you've timed yourself out to 3, just kind of slow things down. Or don't stop. Yeah, just take a breath.
Chair Savory, I wanted to introduce to you, I haven't had an opportunity, Ryan Potter is here tonight. He started working for us on January 2nd as an associate planner with the city. And so this will be his first opportunity to share a case with you. And so, welcome.
Well, welcome, Ryan, and we'll hear from you now.
Okay, great. So tonight I will be summarizing the staff report for Subdivision 1805, which is Territorial Place Estates. So this first slide is just a reminder that staff evaluated this application based on the sections of the municipal code that are applicable. The proposed subdivision would take place at 2525 Northeast Territorial Place. It's a 2-acre property that's on 2 tax lots. It's located between Northeast Territorial Road and Northeast Territorial Place, which is on the northeast side of town as you're heading north out of town. This property was annexed last year. So I believe this property has been before you before. So this is an aerial of the site as it is now. As you can see, it's adjacent to Territorial Road. It's got residential uses to the south and west, a church campus to the east, and then to the north of it is the Willamette Wayside Natural Area. Oh, excuse me. And then so you can see that there's an existing house towards the middle of the property, and then a shop garage structure on the north end. So the proposed subdivision would subdivide this property into 9 lots. The existing house would stay. The existing shop structure would be demolished to accommodate the lotting of the other home sites. The street pattern, as you'll see in the following slides, will be reconfigured to align with North Vine Street, which is on the other side of Territorial. And no lots will directly be accessed or front onto Territorial. They'll load onto the interior streets. And then lastly, Spitz Road will be, it's already owned by the city, but it will be improved and dedicated to the city. This is the proposed plan. Here I've highlighted where the lots are. So you can see that lots 1 and 2 are along Territorial, but they front onto a new street, Riverbend Drive. There would be access from Vine Street, which would align across Territorial with the existing Vine Street. And then you can see that there's a shared access driveway that would connect 3 flag lots, lots 5, 8, and 9. And then the existing home would stay on lot 6. The shaded area on the lower right is an area that's currently Spitz Road, but it would be dedicated as a city-owned pedestrian path connecting Spitz Road with Territorial. So these are the criteria that we use to evaluate this application, and it includes all the usual sections of the code, including standards and procedures and subdivision design standards. So this subdivision application complies with all the main things that we look at when we evaluate a subdivision. The lots are consistent with R1 zoning. They're between 7,000 and 10,000 square feet. There are 3 flag lots, but they would all have access to a public street. They would 20-foot wide access strip. They would connect to Spitz Road. The proposed streets, consistent with code, would continue the grid pattern, as I explained earlier, across Territorial. And then the code does allow for Planning Commission to be empowered to accept dedication of land for street purposes. These next 2 slides, I've just highlighted a couple of the conditions of approval. Most of the conditions are standard ones. I wanted to point out that this subdivision would take advantage of a provision in the code that allows low volume local street standards. So they would be a little bit more narrow than some of the other streets and other subdivisions. They would only have parking on one side. There's another condition that goes into the requirements for the commercial driveway approach, so that the shared access to the flag lots would also function as a turnaround for emergency vehicles. And then also requiring the pedestrian path to be improved. And then also for a shared driveway maintenance agreement to be recorded for use of the shared driveway to get to the flag lots. So based on our analysis of the criteria, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I do have one. So, I drive by there occasionally. So I don't think that Spitz Road nor Territorial Drive are improved roads. Is that correct?
Right, Spitz is gravel, and Territorial Place,
Place, yeah.
I think is also unimproved.
So who is the developer responsible for improving the road?
Spitz Road, yes.
What about Territorial?
No.
No, Territorial Place is not a part of this application. It's off-site. There is no plans. Technically, it's not really a road anymore. I mean, physically, there is portions of pavement, I think, on that road in places, but I think it's mostly a gravel road. But when the wayside area was deeded or given to the city, they also vacated the county roads, which was Spitz Road and Territorial Place. And so technically, they're no longer county roads, and they aren't city roads, but they are city-owned properties where those roads are at. How they did that when homes were taking access to them, I have no idea. But since they're physically there, the roads themselves, and they are, Territorial Place is providing access to one or more existing homes, I don't see the city, taking away that access, even though it's technically not a real road anymore.
But it is city-owned, correct?
But it is city-owned property, just as the wayside area is city-owned property.
Maybe I missed this, Brian. Do you know when that actually happened, when it was vacated?
I forget the date now, it's not in my head, but it was 2004.
So it's relatively recently.
Yeah,
All right.
sometime in that.
Well, my concern is that if Territorial Place, if that's going to become if they're going to have access to Territorial Place, again, I drive by there and I agree with you. I think that it's, not an improved road, barely a gravel road, kind of post-apocalyptic road, actually. So who's going to be responsible if they're going to use it?
Well, and that's, we had lots of testimony at the annexation about Territorial Place.
I recall that.
And the fact that no one has really stepped forward to maintain that road. And certainly they've contacted the county, which the city was referring them to. The city didn't realize until this was proposed to be annexed that it technically wasn't a city road or a county road. And so the city wasn't aware that we basically own that property now, and there happens to be an existing road on it, so maybe we should be helping take care of it. We already directed people to the county. Well, clearly, it's not a county road anymore, and the county has no responsibility. And we're not really here tonight to debate the issue of who's going to, and how are we going to maintain that road in the future, or are we? But it is city property and it's providing access to property. That's all we know at this point. The proposed road to this subdivision is Spitz Road, and it's going to be dedicated and built to a city standard street. The question might be, should we block off the end of it against the city's wayside park area and Territorial Place so that there isn't free access from this subdivision on around to Territorial Place? And that certainly could be done. We didn't actually make it a condition of approval, but we planned for that possibility by having a turnaround in the flag lot area for fire trucks, so that if this road was blocked, we could easily do that. We could easily block it. They come in and use that emergency turnaround, any of the people that are using this subdivision, and come back out the Vine Street entrance. And that would eliminate any traffic from this subdivision on Territorial Place, and we wouldn't have any other traffic other than those that see the road on city property and have been using it for many years to get to that wayside area. There's really no parking lot there, so I don't know how many people are actually driving up there to use the park, because there's really no parking area.
Well, I would be a little bit concerned, since it's a city road, that there might be some liability to the city for that.
Yeah, it's something the city needs to figure out how they're going to address, and it has not been addressed at this point.
So
with
as a
this subdivision.
condition, as a condition of approval here, can we ask that territorial place be not abandoned but blocked off from traffic? Is that under our purview?
Yes, that is, because that's related to this subdivision, and if you're afraid of contributing additional traffic to what is a remnant road on city-owned property, because just because the method of the vacation said that it's no longer a county road, we don't know that that made it a city road. It just made it city-owned property from the vacation. So it seems odd to me that it got vacated in the first place.
Follow-up question on that. Just on the flag lot access, that is going to be used for emergency vehicle turnaround. And I guess I'm asking, was that design, I presume that means it was designed for that purpose, the radiuses were changed so that you
Right.
could get bigger vehicles
Right.
in and out of there?
And that will be finalized at the construction stage, and the fire department has indicated the concept is fine, and they'll make sure that this is built to the minimum 20-foot width and that the radiuses will enable them to pull into the driveway and then back up so they can go back out frontwards if they ever go back inside here to fight a fire. But, yeah, in answer to your question, we had not, as a city, responded for tonight's meeting as to whether we preferred a barrier or not. So we didn't make it a condition, but it certainly could be a condition if you think it's critical not to invite additional traffic around Territorial Place.
I think I'd like to hear from the applicant on how they feel about that before.
Did I read correctly that there is an addition of what you guys are thinking, a maximum of 20 cars during peak hour?
Yeah, it's
Something like
9.6 cars or something per lot is the maximum 24-hour. ITE manual says that that's how many trips on average an individual single-family home generates. You don't know if these homes are average or not, but that's how they do that. So 9 times 9 is the maximum 24-hour trips for this proposed subdivision.
Any more questions from Ryan?
I had another question. So according to the tax lot map provided by the applicant, Territorial Place is shown to be vacated. Typically when it's vacated, half the road goes to one side of the property, and whoever owns that gets that half of the right of way, and the other half goes to the other side, whoever owns that. But according to the applicant's survey, it shows Northeast Territorial Places appears to be right of way, which is kind of confusing because the vacated tax lot map shows that it's vacated. Has there been any title reports that show whether it's been vacated or if it's actual right of way still?
Oh, we reviewed a document. I don't think we've had any opinion from an attorney or anything, and it seems that the vacation merely converted the county roadway to city-owned property. And that's what the vacation said, the document. And that included Spitz Road and Territorial Place. And of course, we already owned, and in that same action, we became owners of the Wayside area from the state park system or something, gave it to the city. And so somehow or other, these roads, county roads, because both of those were originally county roads, were part of that deeded area, maybe because they were providing access to the state park land that was donated to us. Somehow or other, those roads were a part of it.
Okay.
And so I don't know if your question was about Territorial Place or about Spitz Road.
Territorial Place, and I
Okay.
guess, would it be considered city right-of-way or city property, or is there a difference between the two?
From reading the document, that's where we came up with the fact that it wasn't really city right-of-way, because the document didn't say that at all. It said it was vacated and changed to city-owned property. Didn't say anything about road or right-of-way.
But it's got a road on it, it's
Yes.
city-owned property, so it sounds like it'd be a city road, but maybe not quite a
Yeah.
city road.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly where we ended up.
All right, thank you.
And at this point, we know that since it's city-owned property and there's currently a road on it, and it used to be a county, and we have to go from there and decide if the city's going to contribute to filling the potholes now, that's what the neighbors were concerned about before. And we still need to work on that decision, on how we're going to take care of that road.
Any more questions for Brian?
I guess a follow-up question, if there's a current road and it's going to be improved, well, at least maybe taken care of, is there any reason why the city wouldn't want to make it paved
Well,
or improved
yeah,
when they have the chance?
I think the answer to that lies in the fact that the design of the proposed subdivision tonight shows the possibility of extending, what's the name of the east-west street, Ryan?
Line?
Riverbend.
Riverbend Road. It shows that it could keep going towards the opposite direction. Rather than towards Spitz Road, it can go the other way and serve redevelopment of that area inside of Territorial Place. Because at some point, that can be more efficiently subdivided to accommodate more single-family homes, just as this area is. And so it's possible that that road could potentially go away someday and be served by Vine Street, and all the development in that area come down. Or it could be incorporated into a new subdivision design with both, serving from there and continuing to serve from Territorial Place. The master park plan for the Wayside area showed a parking lot at the corner of Territorial Place and Territorial Road, possibly with an access point on each. We don't know. It was just a concept plan, but it was near that intersection of the two. So I'm not sure which one would have the access to that park if it got developed that way. It was just a concept plan, so we don't know where the parking lot would necessarily be, but that was one concept of where one might be to serve that parkland.
Thank you, Brian.
I have a question. So were all of these areas annexed at the same time, this site and the ones that are adjacent that are wrapped by Territorial Place, or are those not annexed?
No, they're not annexed at the current time. Only this proposed subdivision area was recently annexed. The others are still in the county.
Okay,
But we have city-owned property where the road is.
right. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So to follow up, my head's going to explode here. So on the unannexed property will be surrounded by Territorial Road, which is city-owned, and which goes, and then Territorial Drive, which is city-owned, and then Spitz Road on the other side. So those will, all those properties in there I'm looking at, I think I'm counting 1, 2, 3, are just going to be surrounded by city-owned roads. Is that correct?
Well, they'll have on the kind of southeast each side will be this proposed subdivision that's been annexed, that is in the city, and the associated Spitz Road. And yes, then you have Territorial Road, which is city-owned, but still in the county. and Territorial Road, which is the city. Mostly the city now. We actually,
Some of.
we annexed a part of Territorial Road with the Cutsfort's annexation last year as well.
Okay. Can't tell the players without a program. Okay, so are we, any more questions? Okay. You good? Okay. Can we hear from the developer, please? If you will state your name and address, you have 10 minutes.
5?
Up to.
My name is Robert Price, P-R-I-C-E. I'm representing Paul DuPont and the family on this property. Here tonight is Blake DuPont of the DuPont family, and also Bruce Goldson, the civil engineer from Theta LLC. Neither one of them will make any kind of a presentation, but they're here to answer any questions.
Okay.
To start off with, that discussion of territorial place up there almost gave me a headache. We
We feel your pain.
Yeah, we aren't going to use territorial place in any way, even though lot 8 and I think 7. Ryan, can you go back to the site plan? Thanks. 8 and 9, they have frontage on territorial place, but it's not a public right-of-way, so we can't access off of territorial place. Okay? 8 and 9 are going to be flag lots that will go out to the improved Spitz Road. So we're going to make no use, 0, of territorial place. However, if the city wants to block off territorial place and make some improvements or something like that, we'd be happy to talk to them, talk with the city about it. You know, it might be a shared project. I mean, we put in a barricade or a couple of loads of dirt. The city puts up a couple of signs, and it, you know, might be done. I don't know. But we're going to use Spitz Road and Riverbend Drive and Vine Street as the access to all 9 all 9 lots on this site. Okay. Now, Ryan's, you got him as the planning director already.
Quick promotion.
Quick, too. He gave a good staff report. All of the information that he gave is accurate. The lots will range from 7,001 to 9,085 square feet, which is within the range for the R1 district. That goes from 7,000 to 10,000, so we fit. We'll have 3 flag lots, 5, 8, and 9, and they're all in the same general location. And the requirement is that we build a commercial grade street or access for the flag strip. And one of the reasons for that is when you put a 60,000-pound fire vehicle on a normal asphalt city street, he'll be up to his axles in about 10 feet. So you've got to build a street that can carry that kind of weight. And that's what the condition has asked for from your engineering department. We understand that, and we're going to do it. So it'll be a properly built street that will carry a 60,000-pound vehicle. Okay? As Ryan mentioned, the dwelling on lot 6 will remain, but the shop building that now sits on lots 8 and 9 will go away. So we're only going to have 8 new dwellings and 1 existing. And the idea of having Vine Street relocated, if you will, on the north side here, makes sense. Then you've got a 90-degree intersection, not something offset, which Spitz and Vine is at the present time. So we'll build Spitz, we'll build Riverbend Drive, and we'll build the new Vine Street down to Territorial Road. And it'll be a nice set of city streets there, if you will. that will meet all standards, all required standards, and provide excellent access for all 9 lots on the property. Nobody's going to use Territorial Place. There is an urban subdivision on this side of Territorial down below here with lots that are about the same size or maybe even a little smaller than this one. And because the property was annexed to the city just last year and designated R1, we have the right to develop it as an urban subdivision. And that's what we're doing. The first bullet on page 2 of the staff report under the summary of findings says the affected parcels are legal lots for land use purposes. And, you know, we agree with that, but the staff stated that and we'll buy it. Sanitary sewer and water are available, just with some extensions. And the city engineer wants a full stormwater analysis prior to construction plans. That's standard. We'll do that. Bruce is here. He knows what to do. He's only been doing it for 45 or 50 years. And as I said, Spitz Road will be realigned to join with Vine so that we've got a good intersection there on Territorial Road and not something with 2 offsets. That always messes up traffic. The project will meet all standards and requirements of the code sections that Ryan listed, especially 1662, which is subdivision applications, 1664, subdivision design standards, and all of those others listed under item 3 on page 2 of the staff report, and Ryan listed them on one of the little videos there. We'll have a shared access maintenance agreement for lots 5, 8, and 9, so that they have to pay up when it's time to do some maintenance, because basically it's private property. There's a question about off-street parking, and it said that we don't meet the standards. Well, we haven't shown where the homes are, so it's a little difficult to show exactly where off-street parking would occur. But as was noted in the staff report, these properties are large enough that we can meet the off-street parking requirement. So, and we will, of course. We would like you to follow the recommendation of the staff report to approve this thing with conditions, all 51 of them, and we've reviewed them and they're acceptable. We'll buy them. We're okay. And if you want to add condition number 52 about something to do with Territorial Place, and I have no idea which direction you might go on this, we'd be willing to sit down with the city and talk about a joint effort to do something at the end of Territorial Place. Now that, believe me, Territorial Place doesn't just have potholes, it has craters. And there may be some asphalt and some gravel, but it's all at the bottom of the craters. And so you never know what you get when you go down that road or that city-owned property. But it's not going to do us any good. It doesn't do us any particular harm, but it's not going to do us any good. We're not going to use it. So we're satisfied with the way things are now, but if the Planning Commission feels they want to do something about Territorial Place and cutting it off from Spitz Road or whatever you want to do, go ahead and create something. And again, we'd be happy to sit down and talk with city staff about how we would do that. We'd be happy to participate. We don't want to take on the whole burden, of course, but we'd like to participate with the city to do what we can do to achieve the end of Territorial Place being the end. I don't have anything more at this point. I had 2 pages of notes, but Ryan did such a great job with the staff report, I don't have to reiterate.
Okay.
Just wasting time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I have a question. Will the neighborhood be fenced off or gated off, or will those 3 lots that back up to Territorial Place be able to use it like an alley to access the back of their properties?
theoretically, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's city-owned property. It's not a city right-of-way. And so they have no legal ability to access onto Territorial Place for any reason.
So, but
And-
the neighborhood's not going to be fenced off or gated
No.
off or anything?
I've got a question. How would those homeowners know that they can't drive down a gravel road to
To get to the end,
get to their backyard to load up some gravel or drop off bark dust or
I think that's,
pull out a tree or whatnot if it's
Yeah.
not fenced?
I think that's part of the condition number 52, if you will. I think there'll have to be some signs up there along the Territorial Place. This roadway does not go through. You know, this roadway is blocked off ahead, or something like that, so that people will know, and certainly those people who live there are going to know. But for those people who visit this area, I can't imagine anybody really use that road for just visiting. And Spitz Road is going to be a much better road anyway for these people.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but do people currently use Territorial Place to access the park back there?
It's possible.
Okay.
It's possible, but it's not a very good idea.
So none
sure.
of the construction traffic would be using Territorial Place. It would all be using Spitz Road and
Yeah.
Riverbend Drive.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Thank you very much.
And again, Blake DuPont from the DuPont family is here, and Bruce Goldson from Feta LLC, our civil engineer, is here. So if you have any of those questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, quickly go through this. Got you all ready. I've got 3 people that wish to testify. Clint, are you a pro or a con? You didn't indicate, so if you're neutral, it doesn't matter, but you're first up.
Chairman Savory and fellow commissioners, thank you for all you do for our community. My name is Clint Coleman. I live at 2114 North Vine Street, so I'm just right across the street. So, one of the things I just want to remind folks of, and what concerns a citizen like myself, is there's 9 developments, either current or proposed, that will impact Territorial Road. The Northwoods development, the Locust and Holly development, Maple Street, Oak Street, Pine Street, apartments on Territorial, North Redwood development, Territorial Place, the Cutsforth development. And I'm currently a pretty active member of the Canby Traffic Safety Committee, and the police in our community do a fine job, and they tell us that, you know, they spend about 60% of their time on Highway 99E because that's where the majority of cars are, which does limit the amount of coverage that they can give to our neighborhoods. And so I just want to say that it's very important that these new developments take into consideration the existing neighborhoods and do as much as possible to maintain the quality of life we've grown to admire about Canby. And so Territorial Place, the 9-lot subdivision, I want to do my part to ensure that this is a successful development. We care a great deal about our neighborhood and want this new development to recognize. We want them to do their best to make sure this development is building high-caliber homes in keeping with the existing neighborhoods. Will this neighborhood have a sidewalk along Territorial? And if so, we recommend a crosswalk so we could cross over and walk to the Wayside Park. We also recommend, now this is not, up to the developer, but I certainly encourage the city to pursue this, digital speed signs on each side of the road. And the reason I say that is when you turn the corner at the bottom of 99, or Territorial, it's less than a quarter of a mile from the bottom of that hill to Highway 99E. And there's quite a lot of activity. You've got a church, you've got Walnut Crossing, and once the Cutsforth development gets done, you've got Vine Meadows, and then this new Territorial Place. So there's quite a lot of activity. And since the police have to dedicate 60% of their time to Highway 99, we don't often get the coverage in the neighborhoods that we like. And so my recommendation would be we do a traffic study and reduce the speed on Territorial from 30 miles an hour at the bottom of the hill to 25, add the digital speed signs, and have a crosswalk. And then I would encourage the developer to try to retain as many of the trees as possible, or certainly maintain a good amount of trees. I recommend there's no parking in the new neighborhood to go to the park. I think, this is potential problems for the neighborhood if you've got cars parking there and sticking around after hours. I think that, going down Spitz Road would be ideal for the new neighbors in that community, and then also the neighbors around. They can walk to the park, but I don't think there should be any parking to go to that park. I think a better location might be where the proposed dog park was sometime back, down near Willow Creek, across from there, to have a little parking area. And if there is any parking area, I don't think there should be any parking allowed after dusk. I recommend that as you come up Territorial Place, it dead ends right at the beginning of this property. So there's like a turnaround, so if there's a garbage truck or fire truck that has to go in there, it just turns around. I don't think there should be any looping around of that Spitz Road Territorial Place. See here. And again, going back to the reason for the reduction in speed on Territorial, a lot of people don't realize there's quite an elevation change, because as you climb the hill and you peak there at Vine Street, it drops down quite a ways when you get to Walnut Crossing. And if a car's flying up the hill at 40 miles an hour, they're closing at a rate of about 58 feet per second, and there's only about 528 feet from the bottom of the hill to Vine Street. So I appreciate your consideration to my thoughts, and I'm all in favor of the development. I just want them to take great care, that they care as much about our community as we do. Thank you.
Hope, don't go anywhere,
Okay.
Clint. You know the rules here.
Okay.
Any questions for Clint? So, questions? So, Clint, I'm traffic. I feel the same way about all the traffic and the development that we've approved here. I don't know that there's anything that the developer can speak to on any of this unless and he's already spoken to the Territorial Place issue. You're very familiar since you were on the city council. I don't know where you take all of your recommendations. I mean, that's certainly not something that's in our purview, I don't think.
Okay.
At this particular juncture.
The speed limit?
The speed limit is definitely not in our.
Well, actually, if I could answer that, back some time ago, because I was a counselor from 2012 to 2016, and at that time the speed limit on Territorial was 35, and
Correct.
At that time it was Greg Ellis was the city manager, and he was good enough to go to ODOT for us. We recommended that he do that. They did a study, took a tremendous amount into consideration, and they were satisfied with our recommendation to bring the speed down to 30 miles an hour. I believe they would have actually been willing to go farther than that, but the thing I wanted to point out about this, a lot of people don't realize, even without all these developments being done, the last traffic count on Territorial daily was right around 7,000 cars a day. And so as these new developments come online, that's a whole lot more cars. And the thing that I'm trying to impress upon the developer is if they support our calming recommendations, I think it makes their homes more desirable because no one wants to turn into their street and have someone just right on their tail. And I think that there's too much of that, and, we want to keep this a wonderful place that it is.
Okay. Any questions?
How do we go forward with that, with the recommendations? Because I live pretty close to Clint as well, and I see that as an issue too.
Actually, if I could answer that too, I'm the traffic.
Sure, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. I'm the traffic safety chair, and actually I'm going to have that on the agenda for our next meeting. We meet on the second Friday of every month, just right next door in the Willow Creek Room. And that's something I want to pursue, is looking into contacting ODOT and getting a reduction of speed from 30 to 25 from the bottom of the hill up. And then I've already put in recommendations for the digital speed signs with Public Works, and, that's kind of a work in progress.
Okay.
Glenn, I want to make sure I understand. You turn on my mic here.
It's still not.
Yeah, no, I'm pushing. There it goes.
There you
When you talk about from the bottom of the hill, I just want to make sure I'm clear about where that's at.
If you bring up the drawing, the topical drawing.
Because you're only talking about lowering it to 25 for a portion. Is it like before the bend there, or?
Yeah, if you go right down there where Territorial Place begins, off of Territorial.
Yes, sir.
That's the bottom of the hill, and you climb all the way to
Yeah.
Vine Street, which is kind of cresting the hill. And then if you go all the way to Walnut Street, you've really dropped down. So if you have someone in Walnut Crossing that wants to cross the street to go to the park, and you got someone flying up the hill.
Okay.
And then another thing, just a personal case study, we had a car that was coming up the hill and a car that was turning onto our Vine Street, and the car that was turning onto our Vine Street looked away for a moment, and the car coming up Territorial went around her and blasted into our brick wall and almost hit our house.
Wow.
And
I've seen that.
and fortunately, it was just a small Honda Civic, but my goodness, if it had been a big truck and it was wet out, it wouldn't have been so good.
So just to restate what I'm understanding you're suggesting or recommending, and that is somewhere around where Territorial Place comes into Territorial is where you'd like to see
Yeah, I would
the
like to
speed reduced from 30 to 25.
Yes, I think it's
And
probably...
that's coming north along Territorial towards 99E.
Yes,
At
and
that
if-
point, you'd drop it to 25.
Well, I go 25 all the way up the hill to 99, and if you're
down.
coming off of 99, it should be 25 until you get to Territorial.
Very good. Understood now. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'll contact me, later on about that,
Sure.
I'd like to talk to you about that.
Thank you very much.
Let me see. I think is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of the project? Okay. I have Mr. J. Spillum. Jay, if you'd like to state your name and address for the record there.
I'm Jay Spillum. I live at 2121 Northeast Territorial Road. My time started on?
Yeah, you're on the clock.
Wow. A lot of muddy waters so far with Territorial Place there. In a couple of past meetings, City Council in this format, I expressed concerns about the development itself. I've got some concerns right now, partially about Territorial Place and some other things I'll add that I have not talked about in the past. But anyway, I'll just read this off and then maybe add a few more comments if I have time. The City of Canby is looking to claim land along vacated Northeast Territorial Place based on easement claims added to the deed of tax lot 1500 in 2004. I do not believe that there is a valid easement here. The deed to my property shows no easement along Territorial Place. If valid, why don't they show up on my deed? I purchased in 2010 and it only shows a 20-foot easement on Northeast Territorial Road. It is my understanding that when a road is vacated, ownership to the center line of the road goes to the adjacent property owner unencumbered by any easements. It has been that way since 1943 when the road was vacated. I wish I brought the document with me. I have it at home.
Do you mind, Do you mind, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Do you mind pointing out to where your actual property is on this map so I can kind of track along while you talk?
It's to the left of the place where it says subject property, and it's a long territorial road.
Okay.
So right in here?
Yes, and it goes all the way to Territorial Place. That's my shop down below there.
Okay. Thank you.
Where was I here? It's been that way since 1943 when the road was vacated. An early notification letter on another matter for Annex 1801 lists the property address as 2125 of the development here, Northeast Territorial Road, when the most recent listed as 2125 Northeast Territorial Place. Also, the project name has been changed from DuPont Annexation and Zone Change to Territorial Place Estates Subdivision. I guess maybe you had to pick a name. Was this an attempt to aid in proving that Northeast Territorial Place is something other than vacated? The easement for tax lot 1500, which may or may not be valid, were apparently added to the deed in 2004 because it states tax lot 1500 had no outlet. How can that be if the city owns tax lot 1600 and 200, which have access to Territorial Road? If the city wants to build a road in the area of vacated Northeast Territorial Place, doesn't appear to want to now, which is good, but why doesn't it build on its own side of the property line instead of trying to take part of my privately owned land? You could wait until the growth boundary is expanded if that was an issue. Furthermore, if North Vine, Riverbend, and Spitz now create an outlet for tax lot 1500, there is no need for an easement along vacated Territorial Place, and the purpose of the would-be easement has been satisfied. I believe that the easements, if someday found to be valid, would place undue hardship on myself and my neighbor. It would take a large amount of land away from us. The line drawn on the map goes through the middle of my neighbor's shop and historically significant barn. It also cuts very close to the front of my shop and shed, cuts off also my semicircular driveway, which makes me wonder if they would be violating my buildings would be violating setback distances if deemed valid, if the easement was. In the notes of the August 31st, 2016 pre-application meeting, Brian Brown did not know if Spitz Road belonged to the city or not. He did not know if the 2004 easements of tax lot 1500 were valid. It was left up to the developer, Mr. Givens, to decide if they were any good, first with respect to Spitz Road and now with Territorial Place. I saw that written in this write-up. What do you think a developer is going to say? Do you think a developer may have financially driven bias? It doesn't seem so from what he said there, but I wrote this earlier. This seems possibly irresponsible and might be an illegitimate thing for a city to do, to leave it up to someone else. How can the city claim, and that's another question, privately owned land that is in unincorporated Clackamas County? Is that 5 minutes?
I don't know what that little sound is, so we've not experienced it before. Laney, is that his time?
I started it kind of early, so.
Oh, you go right ahead.
Okay. It's something else I had noticed was that a new property marker was recently put in the corner of my property next to the annexation and Territorial Road that set back further than 20 feet, which is the right-of-way along Territorial Road in front of my property, as my deed states. And I'm just assuming that must be for the new property, not my new corner marker. I don't know. That's all I had.
Okay. So I assume that the applicant will have some rebuttal or some added information for you on this. But have you had your property survey? I see 3 lots in here. I guess I'm confused as to which lot is yours. You know, so that is it this right along here?
Yes, and it runs all the way. I actually have 2 tax lots of record,
Right, okay.
but they,
go all the way back?
no.
Side to side.
Oh, side to side.
Like
Yes.
across where it says
Okay, got
RES,
it.
that way.
Got it, thank you.
And the easement that was tacked onto tax lot 1500 cuts right across, the line drawn on the map. I don't know how they got it on the map, and the county didn't either. When I asked the county, like, how did this happen? They couldn't figure out how it was added on there. I talked to Doug Cutchell, a Clackamas County road engineer.
Is your main concern then that part of your property is being taken?
Yes, that's one of my main concerns. I have other concerns about the development, but overall, I think it looks pretty good.
I guess I'll ask the developer when he comes back up here whether he is, I assume that he had surveyed the property, surveyed everything. So I would think that you might want to talk to Mr. Price about how his survey conflicts with.
Well, I have a feeling it may be because Northeast Territorial Road easement is different than what my deed says. You know, they may have a wider easement for this development than mine, so they put that marker there. But I have a map showing at home that my corner marker is 20.3 feet from the center line of the road. And this marker was closer to 24-ish feet, so.
Okay.
So just to,
Go ahead.
just to summarize, make sure that I understand, part of your concern is what the future issue might be with Territorial Place.
Absolutely.
In infringing on your easement there, or their easement onto your property.
Right.
Okay, and so that's the one issue. Do you have any concerns with this dotted line on the side of your property up to where Vine Street is? Are you confident that you don't have they're not encroaching on your property, or you don't have an issue there, or do you not have enough information to make that decision?
I think that, as far as I could tell, I'm not sure about that corner marker, if it was misplaced or not, but there is still an original marker. If you go this way from Territorial Road along that dotted white line, there is a fence line, and there is a metal piece of rebar or a pipe or something set in the ground just on the development side of that fence. So it appears to me that I own the fence, but it's hard to tell where that new marker was put because there's a hedge there, you know, where exactly, and I couldn't find the old marker. There's a telephone pole that is there that may have messed up or ruined the old marker. I don't know.
So are you more concerned with the marker going this way, and it's making you concerned about how far into Territorial Road your property goes based on where theirs is? Or are you concerned about the marker going like side to side?
I'm concerned about both. I mean,
Okay, but where the marker is now is more making you wonder what your easement setback is from Territorial Road?
I kind of wonder about both ways because I can't see very well along the fence line. Like I sighted from the pipe that's known along the fence, and I couldn't tell where the marker was because it was hidden. So I really don't know if it's encroaching at all, west to east, I guess.
I would encourage you to contact a professional land surveyor, someone that could do some researching of right-of-way records, easements with the county, and then provide to you as a professional assessment as to where your property boundary is located and whether you've got easements on your property or not. That way they're representing you and your interests versus talking to other people that may or may not be representing your interests.
Okay.
Excuse me. Does the fact that the developer is saying they're not going to use Territorial Place at this point, does that sort of assuage your concerns?
That makes me feel better,
Okay.
yes. But I'm concerned about the future, about having something happen where they move that road all the way up against the front of my shop.
So I guess, to put it colloquially, your beef would be really with the city then at that point, not with the developer?
Yes.
Am I stating that the correct way?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Don't go away. I now have Laura Robertson. Laura, if you could just state your name and address for the record, that would be fantastic.
Hello, I'm Laura Lynn Robertson. Everybody calls me Lauren. I'm the other property owner behind I'm the little triangle with the barn and the pasture. And my concerns are more immediate about the development. I had a hard time checking the box pro or con because I'm not either. I want to be a good neighbor. I want to build a good neighborhood. I wasn't thrilled about it being developed, but I'm coming to terms with it. And so I think that my main concerns about this planning was, I'm so happy you guys addressed this, is the territorial place, because it's just a one-lane road. And my 87-year-old father totters down with his three-legged dog down this road to the barn to feed the chickens, right? It's not a real road. And so if we can make sure that that's not part of this development traffic system, that would just make a world of difference for me. So thank you for addressing that.
Any questions for Laura?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much.
I do have a couple other things that I wanted to just make sure that when you look at this overview, you can't see that there's a pretty good hill. And our pasture is going to be taking a lot of runoff if we're not careful about how all these 9 roofs are dumping down into the street or onto the lawns that then run down into the pasture. And when you have livestock in there, mud's a huge issue. So,
And Brian, can you address the storm runoff issue for Laura?
Yeah, you shouldn't have anything to worry about in terms of city ordinance requires all drainage to be handled on site. So each individual house will have their own individual seepage trench for their roof runoff so that it doesn't go across the property boundaries. And so they try to design it so there's no adverse impact across their own subdivision property line. And it's all handled inside. Any runoff on Spitz Road will be handled in a manner that they'll design for the public runoff that falls on the street itself. And that will remain in the street and probably put underground is what they'll decide to do. That's what they typically do.
okay, excellent. Thank you. So then I'm understanding that it will be designed in a way that it will have zero impact on the drainage of my farm.
It's by design, it can't be any greater than it was pre-development across the property boundary.
All right.
So if there was some runoff coming to your property from the subdivision property, that same amount could still be there, but it can't be increased in any way.
Okay, and who determines that?
A drainage study that's analyzed
Okay.
and registered engineers put their stamp on it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I guess I'll just stay involved in the process as it moves along. All right, and I'll learn more. The construction is obviously going to add a lot of mud and overflow, and I'm just wondering, is that infrastructure going to be in place before they start any major construction? So how are they going to keep that construction site from draining down into my pasture and my orchard?
They'll be required to secure a city soil and sediment erosion control permit, which usually erects a barrier at the property boundary that makes sure soil doesn't cross the property line if a hard rain happens, so that there isn't sediment being deposited across the property line during construction.
Okay, excellent. The one thing that I think is a little bit amorphous, but it's one of my big concerns, is that people are going to have dogs and cats and all that, and we raise meat chickens and laying chickens, and they're very sensitive to being barked at, and we've had quite a few chickens actually killed by dog walkers, dogs. But I'm very concerned that there won't be a mandate to have that fenced off between the housing development and our farm, just to protect the farmness of our farm and not have free-moving dogs and dogs able to bark at the horses through the fence and things like that. And I don't know if that's part of the development planning. Like, can that be part of the homeowners association? Like, can it be put into the plan that they have to have a homeowners association that pays and maintains the fence between the property and the development?
I don't know if we have the jurisdiction to require a homeowners association to do something. I can tell you that you would have a private right of action against a homeowner that allowed their dog to violate the law, but I'm sure nobody likes talking to attorneys, so I'm guessing you wouldn't want to go that direction.
Right.
And he's an attorney.
Yes,
And good fences make good neighbors, right?
And I like to talk to him, so.
Good fences do make good neighbors, but I don't know that we would have jurisdiction to require a homeowners association to erect a fence.
Okay.
We do have Oregon laws that would protect you, but I don't think the city
All right.
does.
Well, there's nothing between my property and the development property except an old field fence. So I don't know how that's going to be handled, and so I have concern about that. So those are my top concerns. I would like to reiterate that closing, at least putting like a gate across where the property line goes. My property and the DuPont property where territorial intersects there, if they could just put a security gate or something, because truly, okay, I'm going to fess up here. Those potholes, I call them my hillbilly speed bumps. Because people drive like it's a city road, and it's a one-lane road, and the fact that it's a loop encourages that kind of behavior. And so if that could just be fenced off so that it just remains an access to the two houses that are on it, that would be a great thing.
So, on that subject, are these people that speed up and down Territorial Place, I can't see people really speeding, but...
Yeah, they don't over the speed bumps, but they as soon as they hit flat land, they're like...
are those people that are going to, where are they headed, to the park?
There are a couple of places, spaces worth of parking area by the gate that goes into that field. And I don't think it's an official parking space, but we do have trouble with people parking there for nefarious reasons, and also during the day, people park there and take their dogs on a walk through the field. And so some of those people aren't as conscientious and polite as Clint is, and don't think there's a speed limit because...
Well, Clint's known for his politeness.
Yeah.
So, but would closing off Territorial Place work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be a great thing
Okay.
for everybody, I think.
So closing it off at Spitz would work,
Yeah, if you...
where it makes that turn,
Yes.
if that didn't go
That
through.
would be beautiful. I mean, people walk their dogs up and down that road, and we say hi, and that's all lovely and everything. It's just the driving through, and you know how people are. They're like, they don't want to deal with this way, so they're going to go that way. And I think someone else brought up the hauling bark chips in. You know how people are. They're just going to, unless there's something delineating that that's not okay, they're going to take advantage of it. So,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this issue, neutral or otherwise? Okay, would you like some rebuttal time? You have 10 minutes or so.
Again, my name is Robert Price, representing the DuPont family. Clint's presentation focused mostly on issues we don't have any control over. However, we do support the idea of signs on spits that says no parking here for park use or something like that. But, we can work with the city on that. That could be part of the Spitz Road improvement, that we throw in a couple of signs that says no parking here or something like that. We'll be happy to talk to the city about that. That's not an issue for us. Jay's concerns about territorial place really don't have anything to do with us. We recognize his concerns for having been a longtime resident there. If I lived on territorial place, I'd be concerned about it too. It's an awful road, frankly. And with regard to the corner, and I think Mr. Mr. Chernisov recommended that he get his own PLS, professional land surveyor, and verify what our boundaries and what our surveyor has done. I mean, that's about the best way to answer the question. I will say, over the years I've been in the land development business, I have heard more arguments about the fence being the property line when it's not. More cases, I think probably 75% of things I've been involved with, the fence was not as claimed the property line. And I might say that on my 50 by 100 lot in northeast Portland, the simple survey is off by 6 inches. And there's no fence or anything, there's just a difference of 6 inches between my survey and my neighbor's survey. But we don't worry about it, so. Ms. Robertson, I think was her name. Drainage to the property, we can't have any water going this direction across that dotted line than goes now, regardless of what we do. And that's during construction, that's afterwards. So she's not going to have a bunch of water sheeting off to her property. And in fact, Bruce Goldson, the civil engineer, said the drainage is actually going to go this way towards Spitz. So this particular project may actually reduce the amount of drainage that crosses that dotted line onto her property at the present time. But we got to do a drainage study. And that will probably be one of the conclusions of the drainage study. Okay. Where to place the barrier on territorial place up there. And again, I've said we'll participate in that. We'll discuss it with the city. We think that maybe a good place for that barrier, if you will, would be on that upper corner on territorial, so they don't get to come all the way down to Spitz, because if they can come all the way down to Spitz, they'll find a way to get around and go on to Spitz. So if there's some kind of a barrier or something, whatever it is, we think that maybe the city ought to consider placing it at that upper corner.
Are you talking about the
Northwest.
northwest corner?
Yeah, which
Yeah,
would,
right
in an
there.
up and down world, that's the upper corner. Yeah. Because the rest of Territorial Road doesn't serve anything. It isn't going to serve any of our properties, our lots. The only thing it would do is to provide access to the city lands back in the Willamette Wayside Natural Area. And it'd be foolish for somebody to go down Territorial Place and expect to get there when they can go down and improve Spitz and get there. But, you know, we'll be happy to talk to the city about where to place this and, you know, kind of sharing who does what and all that sort of thing. And again, we support the idea of a couple of signs on Spitz Road that says no parking here for park use or something like that. We don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay.
Done.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah.
Question. So, what about your thoughts about a fence along that line there? We have had other developers do that.
We hadn't planned on doing that. It's kind of an expensive item. And if the people living in the house already have dogs, have they encroached on her property? I don't know. People moving in may have dogs. We don't know that. Normally fences are the responsibility of the property owner, the lot buyer, than the developer, unless there's a condition, a reason to make it an overall condition. And I don't see it at this point. I haven't seen enough proof that there needs to be a fence there.
I think it makes sense for the back sides or side of, depending on how the driveway goes, of 4, 3, 9, 8, and 7 to have fence line. Because that's something that came up from up here with 7, 8, and 9 having back access to territorial and using it like an alley. And then it also comes up with the adjoining property with 4, 3, and 9.
Let me suggest that if you decide to create a condition for fences on those properties, that you lay it on the buyer, the developer of the lot itself, the builder of the home on that lot, because then they can choose what kind of fence they want.
So are you going to have different builders building on each of these lots? Are these going to be not a development where you're building all of the houses
I
by
believe
one
that's
builder?
correct.
Okay.
More questions? Andre? And Brian, that will not come before us, will it? When they go to build on those lots?
No, they'll be getting a building permit and meeting the parking requirements for on-site and the setback requirements. And if along the frontage of the public road, Spitz or Riverbend, building the necessary sidewalk, home builders will be doing that. And they do typically build their own fences, but there are some subdivisions that are adjacent arterial streets and such where fencing has been required.
Do the requirements for fencing fall onto this type of property?
I don't know if I know of an example on an interior boundary, although there was a fence required on the 7-acre subdivision out at the end of Maple, North Maple, past the Willamette Country Club, where it abutted the logging road trail, where I think there was a requirement to put a fence along the logging road trail, if I remember right.
I also believe there was one for the Hope Village, adjacent to the trail they were going to put into the river that runs along there as
Yeah.
well.
Now, I know it's not the responsibility of Mr. Price and his folks, but as a condition of, can we make it a condition that future buyers of these private lots put a fence in?
Yeah, I think that's an option to do it that way. As planners, we generally think if you think there is a legitimate reason to have a fence, that oftentimes it's preferable that it be a developer responsibility so you have uniformity in the subdivision design, but that's usually because it's along a street and something that the public looks at.
Right.
This is in the backyards where it's not really that kind of thing, and so I think that's a potential way to do that. Your reason to do it is so that the dogs don't bark to the neighbor's property?
Kill chickens. Protect
Chickens.
To protect Ms. Robertson's property.
The integrity of the farmland.
Yeah.
Assets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the integrity of the, or lack of integrity of territorial place, considering the condition.
Let me throw in that on Maple, in the 7 acres development that was there. I was the planner for that. And the reason that a fence was required along the old logging road is because of people trespassing back and forth. I mean, there was a steady stream of folks going back and forth during the good weather and when they could go. And everybody just said, hey, why should they be able to cut across somebody's yard? So it was agreed that we'd put a fence along the logging road there just to stop the trespassing. This is a little different, I think, but whatever.
Any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's no more, if there's anybody else that wishes to testify, then I'm going to close the public portion of this hearing. Do we have any more questions amongst ourselves for Brian or Ryan?
Yeah, one, I guess, would be, Brian, I understand the sense that the normal path for putting a perimeter fence would be put on the developer for the sense of uniformity, but since we are dealing with, in most cases, backyards and interior property lines, it seems to me that it would be a permissible way to go to put the burdens for fencing on the builders in this case, since we're not going to be, I don't think uniformity is a requirement in this case. I'm kind of looking to the other commissioners, I say this, to looking for some other ideas on that. But to me, that answers
Yeah, I agree.
the neighboring landowner's concern, and I think it answers the developer's concern. And I gotta believe that that the expectation of anybody building a house there is there probably would be a fence going up. But I think requiring it would be a reasonable step.
You might want to describe the type of fence, though. Are you going to be happy with a chain link fence, or do you want a screening fence?
I would say we put a screening type fence.
In my development, they were required to build good neighbor fences that lasted about 5 years.
I think Ms. Roberts is going to live there longer than 5 years.
Been there for 22, kind of living a lot longer.
Okay, any more thoughts on? All right.
About where we, I'm
Other
sorry.
people speak here first. I don't have one.
About where we build the fence, I mean, is there discussion about, or not the fence, about where we put the block on Territorial
Barricade,
Place?
whatever it is.
Do we want to talk through what that looks like as far as it's going to be?
Let's do it.
I mean, I think of it as when I go hunting on these logging roads, if the state doesn't want you to access, they put a bunch of big boulders up there. In the city environment, usually it's a orange and white sign.
You're going to want something that's prohibited but removable,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of like the barriers that you get on I-5, the concrete.
well, I'm thinking more, places I've seen, for example, where you want to block, for example, bikes, you can put a swinging fence, a gate, that you could lock closed. That would be one way to go, just a gate across the road that locks, that could be unlocked for access when you needed it.
Yeah, that is
I didn't hear, Jennifer?
That's currently my preference. I mean, you are dealing with city-owned property that we don't know how we're going to use it in the future. And we do have to maintain access to the gate that two cars can squeeze in parking right now, because we have to get there some way. There's no reason we can't come up Vine and Spitz Road that will be a public road to get to it, but that means we need a gate that we can open if it's on the end of Spitz Road. If we swing it on around to Territorial Place, we could potentially put one there. But then the general public might still come up Spitz Road, which may be preferable to coming up Territorial Place if they're going to that spot they've always gone, up to the gate to the Wayside Park.
And as Mr. Price indicated, you can put signs, no parking, and he's willing to work with us on that.
Is
Correct?
there a sign now on, move my picture, at Territorial Place and Territorial Road that says not a through street or anything like that? Yes. It is marked as a dead end at the corner of Territorial, for Territorial Place. It says dead end, but so many people have driven around that it's kind of a self-made road.
It's not a very convincing
Because,
sign.
yeah, it's kind of leaning, and my understanding is that Territorial Road actually used to be Territorial Place, but it went straight, and on some of these drives, you can see where it just kind of goes straight up through the woods. There's no real road there anymore. But because so many people drove up and then said, oh no, they just rounded out this corner and turned it into a through road.
I just had one other thought about if you put the gate on the northwest corner of the development property along Territorial Place, I wonder how much of the Territorial Place along the northern boundary would become parking.
My thought would be to put a gate at each end.
That's what.
Well, now, so now,
Two gates is
so
what
that'd
I was-
become 2 gates then?
Yeah, 2 gates.
I think gating off the end of Spitz Road would accomplish what we're looking to accomplish here.
I think so.
Well,
Because it's not to make it a loop.
But if you gate it at the end of Spitz Road, I mean, your questions about the alleyway, though, I mean, become on the table
Well, not
again,
if there's
right?
a
Like
fence.
lot 8 and 9 can, if there's a fence,
If
but, yeah.
it's a condition to put up, have a gate there and
Yeah.
then do fences across 4, 5, 9, 8, 7. And that could be something that, it's a condition that if the developer chooses to pass that along to the builder, they can do that. But as far as we're concerned, it'd be a condition of approval for the developer to put in the development, how he handles it with the builders of the lots, as long as there ends up being a fence. I don't think it makes a difference.
I think, I agree. And I think that since I drive there, I see people doing exactly what Ms. Robertson says. They're walking their dogs along there. I have seen your elderly parent tottering along there. So, but my feeling would be is that we have gates at each end, so that there is no access at all to Territorial Drive at either end.
Yeah.
And with the fences, I think that would protect you. I don't think we can, absent a survey, your own survey, I don't think that there's really much that we can do on your end of it here, except to protect you that way.
I agree with you on the 2 gates, I think.
Yeah. So, Andre, how do you feel about the 2 gates and the fences?
Where would that second gate be? I understand the one at the end of Spitz Road, but
The other one would be where,
Top corner.
at the corner where Territorial Drive and runs into Territorial.
Territorial Place and Territorial.
Territorial Place, I'm sorry.
That would limit her access. That doesn't make sense.
Second gate, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I'm thinking of right
Yeah,
there at
no,
that
right.
where,
Yeah, that's her driveway.
on city property.
Can you put the
not
picture up that's
something
the big, that one?
there you go.
So where are you thinking?
I just think we need one at the end of Spitz Road, where at the corner at Territorial Place. If you put something down at Territorial Place,
down here,
then that's
can't
going to make it so
access.
she can't access her house.
Yeah.
That's true.
Unless she gets out and unlocks the gate in the mud and the rain, and I don't think that's good. And I don't think that falls under our purview for
Right.
tonight's meeting. I think that it's conditional to the end of Spitz Road, and the fencing falls under our purview, but I don't think doing anything down the other end of Territorial
Yeah, I
falls under
agree.
what we can handle on this tonight.
Probably,
Because that's off-site, that's on city property.
Right,
that's feeling the power.
that's, yeah.
So, Commissioner Trundy, I want to make sure I understand. Are you suggesting that one fence at the end of Spitz Road,
Or some type of, and
one gate?
one gate, or something
All right.
to limit the access? It could be
I,
the equivalent of boulders, but I think we want it to be something that the city can
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
to use later.
I think it needs to be a gate and not a barrier, because
Right.
the city has to access our park on our own property, which we're
you okay with that?
giving them the right to dedicate as a public street, but I think we still want to be able to go out the end of it, the city,
The
that
city.
no one else needs to.
Right.
Mr. Price?
Since this Territorial Place issue is really not part of our project, I don't think we'd have any objection if you included a condition it says some accommodation should be made for closing off Territorial Place, and then maybe a recommendation to the city that they consider doing it a couple of different ways, and then let the city and the property owners kind of work out what the solution is, rather than the planning commission dictating the solution.
Okay. Any thoughts? Andre, Ryan, Larry?
Well, I think instead of 2 gates, 1 gate would be fine at the end of Spitz Road, because they're not going to get any more traffic back there than they're already getting if that road is cut off. And then the neighborhood wouldn't have, that's being built there, wouldn't have to worry about people cutting through their neighborhood to go to that park. And like, it's not really the developer's fault that people use Territorial Place now to get to the park at that corner. But if they opened up Spitz all the way through, then they would give other people access to it. But if a gate was put there, it would eliminate that.
I guess I'm going to support Vice Chair Boatwright's thoughts there, along with Commissioner Trundy. I think 1 gate at the end of Spitz, and I don't have heartburn specifying it needs to be a lockable gate. I mean, that's what it needs. I'm looking at you, Brian, as I say this, something that prevents access and is under control of the city.
Okay. So, and then, are we kind of agreed on that? We agreed on that? And how do you want to proceed? You don't look convinced.
You don't look good.
Yeah, I think I'm convinced.
Okay. And just, Clint.
I hate to interrupt, but I just want to
No,
add
you
this. I just want to add that you may not be aware, but there currently actually is a gate at the end of Spitz Road that's locked, and it is for city vehicles to come and go. So your gate is actually already there, and it is a substantial yellow gate. So the one thing you might do is, if I'm very much in agreement that the northwest corner of the lot circle should close off Territorial Place. And what you could do is you could make a little turnaround right in front of that gate. It's not for parking, but it could be a little turnaround. So when a city vehicle comes in to service, the doggy bags or whatever, or needs to go into the park, they can access that, but then they can also turn around. But it's not for parking for park people. They need to go elsewhere. That would be my thought.
Thank you. Oh, let's.
Why not, right?
Why not?
It's not even 9 yet.
I'm pretty liberal on
I was
this.
just thinking that if there was only 1 gate at the end of Spitz, as opposed to going to the corner of Territorial Place, to go to the corner, people might tend to want to come down in there and park more so than if there was one blocking it up. And I was also thinking, some signs you already talked about, maybe something like mobile access only, or park driving access. And then the fence, I had put comments in at a different meeting about possibly putting a fence along North Vine and my property, because where there was another picture that showed the road turning and headlights shining in my house all the time, and then more road noise. So there might be some thought given to just putting a fence all the way along there if there was one.
Again, I don't think that's. No. I don't think we can actually require them to put an interior fence in there. It's just, but I think that the property owners, we can ask to do that. The people that are going to buy and build.
Well, the other thing is that would be crossing it across Riverbend Road, and that's something where if in the future, at some point, you chose to sell your property and have it developed, it would connect through there. I think that's how they've designed it. Is that what I'm seeing? So.
Okay, so I think that we have, in addition to the 51 conditions, that we have a 52nd and a 53rd. Is that about right? One for the gate, and a requirement for the people, the property owners that are going to build there, to build a fence.
I don't want to invite a lot more discussion on this, but are we sure we can create something that will run with the land for the property owners at the planning commission level?
Brian says we
Like a
can.
fence, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think through the analysis of it.
Well, I haven't seen such a wording, but it seems like it could potentially work. The thing is, the staff has to administer it when the individual lot building permits come in, so it makes it much more difficult for us, because we don't look at it being completed by the developer, but we have to wait, and it could be 7 years before the final home is built. And we have to remember there's this special condition for that particular lot in this subdivision that the builder has to build a fence, and that becomes administratively difficult.
I am all for putting a fence in there. I think it protects them. I am thinking down the road, and I don't think anybody would really spend the money on a lawyer to litigate a $3,000 or $4,000 fence, but stranger things have happened. I'm just sorry about it.
And Brian will be down the road,
Oh, sorry
and we have the new young guy here that he's going to be here a long time, so he'll remember this.
Either that or that'll drive him away.
He's got a nice full head of hair now. Look at Brian. He used to as well. So I will entertain a motion to approve.
Can I really quick on the wording on that, where it's like at a condition for a gate? I think a condition having that access between Spitz and Territorial Place, something that's worked out between the developer and the city has control over locking it or unlocking it. If it's a gate, it might end up being a beautiful berm or plants or whatever it ends up being. But I think that saying it has to be a gate is limiting to what you guys might come up with to make it.
So the goal may be, truly the true goal is to stop the circular motion of traffic.
To make it so that Spitz to Territorial Place isn't a through road for the
Right.
public.
Well, there's a gate already there.
Well, the thing is, I'm not that familiar with this. I've been up that area a couple times, and it seems like the gate that Clint's talking about would not actually, it's not at the end of the concrete public street that will be built on Spitz. It's a little further away. And so
And that's why I think.
they would still be able to go around, I think. The gate isn't really stopping that flow of traffic.
And that's why I'm saying preventing the flow of traffic.
Yeah, that's right. It's for the field,
Yeah.
not for the end of the road that would block that circular motion.
Which is why I think saying it's to stop the flow of traffic from Spitz
Right.
onto Territorial gives you a little more leeway if you need to add some,
Well, could-
Right.
Could
stumps
we-
or rocks or berm or something.
And I think that gets at your prime
Right,
goal, is to block that circular motion.
Right.
right.
And leave that up to the city to decide
and the
how to do
developer.
it?
Right. And what you might add to that, though, is since the applicant's representative here has volunteered that they will participate in the erection of whatever we agree to, so that it's not, because they do their development now, the city has a new expense
Right, exactly.
to erect a gate. So
that's-
we need to put that in there.
But in that, I think as he phrased it before, they will participate
Yeah.
in the solution. And I think that the fence, as was said somewhere down here, I don't think that saying, okay, yes, the builder has to put in a fence. I think the fence is the responsibility of the developer when they put in the development, and they can pass that expense along to the builder, or however they want to handle that. But I think that having a fence there is a requirement of the development. I think that's conditional.
Do you mean, we talked about it being the homeowner that builds there?
Right, but I think we're not controlling the homeowner with our conditional approval, we're controlling the developer at this stage.
Correct, but Brian's saying we could put that onto when they come for an application to build, and put that on the builder and the homeowner versus putting on the developer.
With some
You could
difficulty, yeah.
You could do both, you just got to remember to do it. And there are a couple other times where we've actually had that on smaller developments that have had 1 or 2 flag lots have been one of those where we've done that before too. So yeah, there's 2 choices.
Well, I think staff can draft it how it makes sense to them, and we can review it at our next meeting.
But I think in terms of whether it's developer responsibility or home builder responsibility, we need to give the staff a sense of where the commission's line on that.
I think it should be homeowner responsibility.
I'm going to go homeowner.
I would fall on the homeowner just because in this situation, a developer is not developing these lots.
Right.
And I think there's a big difference to that.
If he were, that would make a difference.
Yeah, it would make it a lot easier if he was, but since they're planning individual builders probably buying the lots, you could have 8 different individual home builders building in here.
Yeah.
Would you do that, word that as the homeowner's responsibility to build a fence
builder?
along that line prior to occupancy or something like that?
Yeah,
Because if they move in there and there's no fence, I mean, it took me a year to build my fence.
Yeah, I think it would be, as part of the certificate of occupancy, is to have that fence in place.
yeah, we would make sure that they're indicating that they're going to build, and whether, if you want it to be screening, you should say that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that they do that with issuance of a building permit, and it'll be implemented prior to occupancy, but they will have to erect one.
And no gate in the fence line.
Yeah.
Especially on the back 8 and 9
Yeah.
lots. That's what I was thinking, like
Yeah, no gate.
smart
It's a
homeowner,
solid-
man.
Solid screening
They're not going to want to
fence,
push that
right.
wheelbarrow through the,
Yeah.
cut a gate in that bad boy.
Any more thoughts? Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Condition number 54. As part of the improvement of Spitz Road, 1 or 2 signs stating no parking for park use or something like that.
Or local, maybe lack of local access.
Resident parking only.
Resident parking only. Well, why, you,
That's something that,
you can work out,
yeah.
but there should be signs.
Park use.
Park use only, no park use. You got all that?
No. Okay, go back to 53. We'll get this wording right. Homeowner's responsibility to build a screen fence along, what boundary?
Lots 4, 3, 9, 8, and 7.
Which corner, though? What would you say?
I guess that's the, I don't know if it's back or
Why are we
side.
leaving?
Do you mean 5?
Yeah.
You mean
5?
4, 5, 9, 8, 7? I'm looking up here.
It's,
7, 8, 9, 5, 4.
It's 9, 5, 4.
okay, on the one I'm looking at, they changed the numbers around. Because 5 is 3 on
Oh, they
this.
have changed it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it'd be lots 9, 5, 4.
So we could use directional.
Or just
On
say
the
perimeter
properties,
development.
the property line abutting northeast territorial place and the property line abutting the northwest boundary of the
I
lot.
think Jeff said, you're right, perimeter development,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the north and west perimeters. but-
Northwest perimeter?
north and west.
and Subject to staff figuring out if that really works, but I
Along
think that's,
northwest perimeter.
It's just gotta be
Community or
one of the
neighborhood.
conditions that we spent the most time drafting
Yeah.
as a planning commission.
It is.
But of the neighborhood, because otherwise it'll make it that people have to put fences on weird sides of their lots.
yeah.
Okay. And do you want to add the parking signs or not?
If you like.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Yes, sure.
So I was thinking that if we end up with the likely gate at the end of the paved Spitz Public Road, that I suppose there's still a chance people going to the park might drive up there and parallel park on that street.
Well, isn't there only parking on one side of the
It's a
street?
28-foot
That's
wide
right.
street, one side.
I mean, there's not going to be a lot of parking in this development. And
So would there be no parking sides on the one side where you can't park?
And
yeah,
then-
there's going to be a designation on one side of the public street that you cannot park on this side of the street. It's either going to be painted or signage so that we maintain 20-foot free and clear for a fire truck to get in there at all times.
Yeah. So I think putting in signage regarding parking for the park or not creates an enforcement issue that I
Yeah,
don't think
it's kind of
we
a
need to
problem
do.
for us because we pride ourselves on public streets, and any parallel parking on a public street is free for anyone to use. So we limit signage that is only for this business or only for this owner. It's for anyone, but yet it can become a problem if park users ends up taking up all of the parking along the new Spitz Road. But I'm thinking that they won't be going to the park by Spitz Road because there's a dead end and they'd have to go walk around the gate, I guess,
Climb over it.
to go there. So maybe they'll come up the other road if they're going to the park. I don't know. Human behavior, it's hard to tell what they're.
Least resistance.
All right,
All righty,
finished?
I think we are.
All right, Mr. Chair, I motion to approve SUB 18-05 DuPont Territorial Place Estates subdivision with the conditions that the staff has already given us, with the addition of condition 52. City and developer will work together to build a barrier of the city's design at the end of Spitz Road. And 53, be the homeowner's responsibility to build a screen fence along the property line along the northwest neighborhood perimeter.
North and west.
Northwest.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're good.
Can I just double check? Did you say it's a block territorial place?
Spitz Road.
Just up there at Spitz and Territorial.
End of
Drive.
Spitz at Territorial.
End of Spitz Road.
Seems like that would place more burden on Territorial Place, people coming up it and going all the way to the park gate. Gate at Territorial.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, when you go there, it's, you're on Spitz, and you can go all the way into the field to a locked gate.
Right, we're
Then
gonna,
back here is where it curves around to Territorial Place, so that existing gate doesn't stop traffic from going.
right, so it would be,
It'll be a different gate.
it would
I'm
be
just
here
saying,
at the end where it hits
The wording would
Territorial.
have to be
Yeah.
that it blocks Territorial Place at the Spitz Road end, I guess is all I'm saying.
And we'll figure
We'll
that
figure
out.
it,
Yeah. Okay. Good enough.
It says at the end of Spitz Road on the condition. The city and the developer will build a barrier at the end of Spitz Road. So that gate that's there now will be moved to the end of the road.
Oh, okay, I see.
or a different gate will be.
A different
Yeah.
gate will be built, yeah.
Something
Or
substantial.
something.
But
Okay.
the end result will be that Territorial Place is no longer part of Spitz Road.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Okay, next item is items of interest from the planning staff. Next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, Monday, February 25th, 2019, is a study session on code amendments, plus we're going to get the Territorial Place Estates, or the Hamilton Acres. Is that correct? Meeting? Hamilton Acres, and I will not be at that meeting. It's my birthday, and my wife's taking me to Palm Springs, so I will not be here for that. Mr. Boatwright is going to chair that particular meeting.
So Chair, you did skip item 6 on the final decisions.
I did, didn't I?
So we don't need to do the final decision for 6B, which was the Hamilton Acres, since we postponed that to
But we
the
do
next.
need to do the other one.
And when you're doing the other one, if you would make it clear on whether you're going to trust us to come up with the final wording of the 2 conditions that we outlined tonight, or whether you want us to bring it back at the next meeting so you can see them.
I think that would be, I would like to see, well, I won't be here, but
I think you should bring it back.
everybody would like to have
Okay.
it brought back. So are we going, do you want us to move
Yeah,
on?
you do need to go ahead and make a
Okay.
motion, though, to, well, I guess actually you don't. If you want to bring it back, we'll just do that and you can prove it then.
Okay, we'll do that then. Items of interest and guidance from the Planning Commission to staff.
Just one thing, we got to be cognizant that when folks speak out out there, they don't get recorded onto the public recording. So we need to be, we were getting raved at by
Yeah.
our folks in the back room there, because none of that stuff was heard or recorded.
Good
All
point.
right.
So maybe we need to repeat the question or repeat the.
Yeah,
We should have them come up if we're going to open it
or
back
at least
up.
repeat, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good point, well taken. Okay, anything else? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned.